Hello, I'm Kathy Greven from Greven & Co. We are financial strategists for life, using financial planning and accounting tools and software to help clients build wealth. And today I am joined by the lovely Kate from The Huddle, and Kate is a conflicts management consultant, which I thought would be very interesting in terms of getting her 20 years of service to a variety of conflict management scenarios to help us weave our way through the conflicts. So there's which I don't like, but there's a program about parenting on the TV, which different parenting styles.
Yeah.
So, which, as I say, I'm not a fan of, but you know, in that situation where the child doesn't empty the dishwasher, some strategies are, you know, that you have the carrot and the stick kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And others, bribery. You know, if you which isn't good in a workplace. Obviously, everyone has to be responsible for their own actions in a workplace. But, you know, if you've got someone new coming in, or if they are a bit on the spectrum or something like that, how do you get them to take that responsibility?
Well, I do it pretty much similar to what I do in a family situation.
Okay.
Which is I'd get their involvement in the decision-making process to start with.
Right.
So I had a friend whose son was having his second gap year.
Oh,
and in his second gap
joy.
year, he was locked away in his room playing a lot of computer games all day. And Mum ended up going and getting another job to sort of help support the family. And there was all this resentment. Talk about rescuing.
Yes.
So anyway, I said, how about you have a family meeting and you say, we're all adults now. These are the roles and responsibilities of the family. These are the bills going out. These are the jobs going to be done. Who's going to do what? And you get everybody to contribute. Okay, what happens if we don't do that? Like, what are the consequences? And so that everybody's part of that decision-making process. What
a great idea.
Yeah, and it's
just giving me good mental thought there.
Well, otherwise we take on all the responsibility and we keep playing adult and then them child, whereas as children grow up, we're now both adults. I'm not here to rescue you anymore.
No.
So and in the workplace, I mean, if somebody's new, I think it's reasonable to give them some time to.
Absolutely.
But also to engage, I'm always into getting the teams to engage in what are our rules of engagement, what would it look like? What would it look like if we say we want to behave like this, but we're not? So what would happen if we started to behave like that? How would we call that out? What would that look like?
Yes.
And so the more we get people to solve their own problems, the better. And that's so powerful. One organisation contacted me because they're a big engineering company and they made big farm machinery. And the biggest challenge they had was that every time a big truck came with materials that needed to be unpacked, all of the staff went missing because nobody wanted to unpack the truck.
Oh.
And so they had a roster system and it failed miserably. And so I said, so this operations manager, how are we going to deal with that? And I said, stop fixing the problem. It's their problem, not your problem. So they had a toolbox meeting. How are we going to solve this problem? Well, guess what? They went back to a roster system, but it was their roster system.
Yes.
They created it. They were responsible for it.
Okay.
So it's like, how do you make people responsible for their own stuff? And I think what we do as leaders, we often say, this is your job and these are your responsibilities, but we don't let the other person to come back the other way and help devise those things and to be part of that conversation. The job might look like that, but in 6 months' time, wow, wouldn't it be valuable to sit down with that person? You've been doing this for 6 months.
Yeah.
What's working well?
What isn't?
What isn't? What were your expectations? Have we met those expectations? And vice versa. The more people love to play, they love their places of work. They really want it to work.
They do. And you spend so much time there.
You do. But so they've got lots of opinions.
Yes.
It's like, well, what could we do better? Now, it doesn't mean everything that anyone says is a great idea.
No.
but you've got to provide them with an opportunity to share their
You do.
passion and enthusiasm, and then you can say, "Thank you so much for that feedback. I'm going to think about it." And you might make changes, you might not. But to me, it's a lot like voting. Like I think one of the things I love about Australia is that we have compulsory voting.
Yes.
And so at the end of every election cycle, somebody wins and somebody loses. But we don't all go and march on the streets because we're all part of the process.
We are.
And we might be disappointed, but at least we had a say.
We had a say. That's right.
Yeah.
And, some people I know don't specifically vote, but the majority, I'm talking 90%, actually more, actually do. So what a great tip.
Yeah.
You've given me food for thought. I've got a couple of ideas going on in my head.
Yeah.
My staff might be worried now. No, nothing like that at all. And just in terms of your diversity in different types of environments, what sort of environments have you
So I've done a lot of work
worked
in government. So particularly done a lot of work with people who are highly technical. So worked with lots of doctors and engineers and scientists and people who are very much because I think, in that sort of DISC, the high C, the analytical, very much into the detail. And I think that I do a lot of work in that space because often those people are very task focused and they recognise they need some assistance with the people side. So I help them with that. I've done work with local government. I've done work with hospitality. That's an interesting space.
Okay.
I've worked with some farms. I've worked with regional. I do a lot of work in regional areas.
Okay.
Which have very different personality of organisation. Like it's a lot more hands on and so I've worked with. I love regional work. I really love it. My dad was from the bush, and I feel like there's a little bit of that in me still. But I just love the challenges. They're really interesting challenges when you are regional because everybody knows everybody else's business.
They do.
And so there's a lot of opinions, a lot of assumptions, a lot of gossip, and it's like, how do we? Well, it's just true.
It's true.
I've worked in nursing homes, and there was some of those challenges around different nationalities working together, and so really interesting forms of racism in different guises.
True.
So really interesting. I'm really intrigued because if you break people down, I think the people are generally good and they're doing their best. But when people are behaving in a manner that is not serving them or their workplace, I just want to know why. What is going on? And so,
true.
It's just a really interesting environment. Yeah.
Okay. And I suppose thinking about those types of industries or those types of areas, and you alluded to it before in, getting the people to come back with their opinions.
Yeah.
How can a leader instill innovation and create, and foster the next, Tesla, sort of creator.
So innovation comes from having psychologically safe workplaces where it's safe for people to speak up and to put their ideas. So if people get mocked or criticised or we've always done it this way thinking or whatever, then people with ideas will leave because there's no point staying there.
No.
So and so you can imagine in science, there's probably quite a bit of innovation, but I've worked in science places where they're terrified to speak up because there is sometimes there can be quite a lot of hierarchy in the sciences, and that can play a big part. So if somebody behaves in a superior manner, it doesn't make it safe, and so that can be a challenge. But the number one rule for innovation is that it is safe to speak up and to disagree, and so you've got to be able to disagree agreeably and not take it personally.
No,
but if you've got a culture where we blame people or we shame people and we use the language of you did this or you did that, without being curious and understanding why things happen and see everything that goes wrong as a learning opportunity rather than a problem, then we're going to stifle innovation. So we really want to, as leaders, create the space where people can trust that it's safe to be different or to speak.
To speak.
And so many workplaces are not safe.
No.
Sadly.
That's true.
And they want to be, and they might even think they are, but they're not. They're not. Often they are walking past. So if they walk past poor behaviour, like that sort of lean into incivility in the workplace, so eye rolling or,
yes.
Sort of that subtle poor behaviour in meetings, or when somebody looks somebody up and down all the time, or is rude or dismissive, and we tolerate that, then it's sort of like, no, I'm not going to speak up because I could be the next person who's going to be shamed.
Could be.
So I don't want to do that. So the best leaders speak last. They don't speak first because otherwise they've just solved the problem and the rest of the team go, what's the point of answering this question?
Yes.
And they also, when something goes wrong, they'll go, okay, let's better understand what's going on here rather than who do we blame.
Yes.
I mean, I used to work for an organisation, they used to constantly talk about whose throat to choke, and it's sort of like,
what?
Well, let me tell you, this is not an innovative workplace. This is like a dangerous workplace. We've got to work out who we're going to blame.
Yes, and I think as society sort of tends to move forward, that people want to feel that safeness or that security when they're going to work.
Yeah.
And that they're valued.
Absolutely.
And if they don't feel they're valued, they're just going to go somewhere else,
They will.
So, that's a real challenge, isn't it?
People will, if they don't feel valued, they'll either work to rule, so they just put in the bare minimum, or they will leave, one or the other. Most of us have left jobs because we didn't feel valued by an employer.
I can tell you, in my 20s, I constantly went from accounting firm to accounting firm because, it was really just get the whip out, get your timesheets up, billable hours. And my male counterparts were doing less than what I was, and yet, they were earning much more than what I was back then. And, it was at review time, it wasn't, well done, Kathy. It was, well, we reckon you could do a little bit better. It's like, oh, really? So,
Yeah. No, we get, and it's so simple, we get so much more with honey than vinegar. Like,
absolutely.
People just want to be seen and they want to be thanked, and it doesn't matter whether, I often hear, well, they're just doing their job, why do I have to make a fuss? It's sort of like, because them doing their job helps everybody.
It does.
And if they feel valued for doing that job, then there's a little bit more of a perk in their step, and they feel that they want to come to work.
More energy.
And it's not about money.
No.
It's not about money. It is about being seen and valued.
Yes.
And so it's not generally about money. It's not about putting on extra pizzas or that type of thing. It's a conversation more often than not. It is the conversation.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Kate, that's very interesting.
Oh.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. My favourite topic. Who knew?
Who knew? But there's some really good insights there. Thank you.
Good.
You've given me a couple of key things to think about myself in not only work but at home as well. So I hope everyone else got some value out of it. I'm sure they did. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.